Good afternoon. Well, this discussion is going to be mainly on the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, as the guest lecturer had mentioned, to know what are your opinions, what we feel, how would it add value to what we're trying to do, how will the special economic zones in Africa or in Nigeria benefit from the African Continental Free Trade Agreement and so on. So you're welcome, and we'll just go straight to the point because we don't have so much time, and what basically is the African Continental Free Trade Agreement as an engine for intra-African trade growth and sustainability. The role of special economic zones, this is what we're doing. So I will start with, because I have very powerful representatives here, people who have been involved in international trade. I think we know that you'll give justice to it and then be able to maybe provide solutions on how best to achieve. Because we've come to that point that Africa wants to talk to each other, and it can only be done through trade and so on. So what Your Excellency the Ambassador, Fred Aga. Oh, wow. Okay. Okay, we'll go to this next person, Olusegun Olusayo. Thank you. You're sitting next to me. Because there have been some challenges with regards to the acceptability of the African Free Trade Agreement, with local manufacturers and the free trade zones or special economic zones, especially with regards to the rules of origin. How do you qualify? What qualifies to benefit from it? So how can you maybe help us dealing with that?
Thank you very much, moderator, and everyone on the high table here, and of course, all our participants, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to start on the note of appreciating the leadership of NEBSA, and of course, my senior brother, Professor Adesuba, on two grounds. One, it is clear to everyone that NEBSA has taken a new, clear direction, which is a plus to its leadership. Secondly, of recent, I read in the news, initiative also under his leadership with the entire team of NEBSA, the 40 SEZ security initiative. Please, a round of applause for that initiative. Personally, I appreciate it, and I salute that idea. Now, on the basis of AfCFTA regarding intra-African trade, depending on the literature that we lay hands our own on, we'll be hearing 16%, 18%. The bottom line is less than 20%. And then we ask the question, why? And then we go to the other RTAs in the North America, in the Asia, in the Europe. They are above 40, even 60, even 70. What actually happened? Now, in answering the question of how that we can actually enhance intra-African trade, I think the first thing to do is to interrogate the provisions of AfCFTA. That is where to start from. What does the provisions of AfCFTA say? Now, I have heard that, yes, product originating from SEZ can actually enter the continental market through, but it's not complete. Now, Article 23 of the Protocols on Trading Goods expressly says that product from SEZ can actually enter the RT of AfCFTA market with a proviso. The proviso is actually speaking to three things. One, the rules of origin. Two, is also talking about regulation that will be formulated by COMS. When I say COMS, it means councils of ministers. So the question to ask is, do we have that councils of ministers regulations now? The answer is either yes or no, because as at May, there was a draft of councils of ministers regulation that will speak to product that is originating from SEZ in fulfilling the rules of origin criteria. Now, that draft speaks to 17 sections. Now, with that in mind, it is clear for us to know that any goods that will come or any product from SEZ into the continental market, the provision says, provided, that is the proviso, provided it meets the rules of origin. So the question is, the knowledge of AfCFTA rules of origin, is it out there with our SEZ, particularly those that focuses on export? Because to enter the continental market, that rules of origin has to be met. I tell you a story. This same time, relatively last year, November, in Libreville, Gabon, the first consultative meeting on SEZ was held. Aftermath of that meeting, one writing that everybody was taking home was to the fact that unfair competition. How will that be addressed? SEZ is benefiting all kinds. But those that are in the custom territory, they lack that particular incentive. So these are the issues. So how do you, that you are benefiting all those incentives within the SEZ, and then you are now saying those in the custom territory, and then you want to enter the same market with them? It becomes an issue, it became a serious discussion. And that was now leads to what Article 23, Section 2 was saying, that there has to be a Councils of Ministers regulation that will now speak to one, how the SEZ will operate in terms of alignment, in terms of the registry, in terms of the governance that actually, dictate the tune of their operation, in terms of the issues of dispute settlement, even in terms of trade remedies. Because there is no way, by the time you begin to have these issues, the issues of trade remedies will happen. Anti-dumping on your product. The issues of safeguard will happen when you are having more than enough entry in an economy. So these are trade policies that is important that we need to have at the back of our mind for intra-African trade to increase. There has to be a handshake or an handshake of understanding the rules of origin of AfCFTA at the moment, which of course speaks to more than 80 products. Perhaps the leadership of NEBSA could begin to look in the direction of having specific or selected export SEZ and having an handshake with another export oriented in the continent. And then we can begin to say there will be a synergy where the rules of origin will be little because there are thresholds to be met. If you are having more than threshold, then you are not going to meet the criteria. But if we have this handshake with other SEZ within the continent, then we can reduce the requirement for rules of origin. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, I think we'll come back to that, your talk, because I know there are people who have a different opinion. Because if you say that something is produced in Africa, it is produced in Africa. And if it goes anywhere, who determines the rules of origin? Is it determined by Africans or by some international standard? This is one of the issues we would like to look at, in line with the new trends and so on. Because it's good to say the rules, but who fixes the rules?
Thank you very much. The rules have been fixed. As a matter of, by the negotiator under the AfCFTA. We can say, are we in 100% of that negotiation? The answer is no. But they have negotiated larger percentage of rules of origin on particular products. So those are the products we need to focus on. And those are the products we need to begin to see how we can ensure that they enter the continental market, which will increase intra-African trade.
Okay. Yeah. Well, like I said, it's something that will still be discussed maybe later, because the essence of this is to open up these discussions for especially the economic zones operators to be engaged. I'd like to go to the former minister who is a practitioner, and at least he has come from different ends, and the way they make the policies, and now he's practicing, because policy may be made, but who practices it and how does it really work? So, question is, sir, do you think the African Continental Free Trade Agreement will erode the essence of special economic zones as currently instituted in many countries, or its advantages, or to add value to the economy?
Thank you very much. Let me also take off from my brother's point to first and foremost commend the MDs of both NEPSA and OXA and their management staffs for conceiving this program. Because if such discussions have been held in the past, I have no doubt in my mind that the special economic zones will have moved bounds and leaps for the country, because these discussions are very important, because it expands the understanding, especially when everybody is saying that there is need for serious advocacy for understanding the work of the free trade zones, and especially now the special economic zones. I think it's highly commendable. It's not too late, and more need to be done so that at least this consciousness of the importance of this very important engine of economic development in the country is taken to all nook and corner of the country. While appreciating this, yes, we in Bundu Free Trade Zone have an enterprise that is one of its kind. We have our sugar refinery, which is one of the very few sugar refineries in the sub-Saharan Africa. Except for Nigeria even, there is only one in South Africa like its type. We have about 750,000 metric tons of sugar plant in Port Harcourt in Bundu Free Trade Zone. So far, so good. We have been exporting product, but it's at the moment just within the ECOWAS trade liberalization area. Using the ELTS model, we have not had problems so far in the West African coast, because our products have gone to most of these West African countries and applicable following the rules of origin from Nigeria being recognized fully, and we have completely keyed into the ECOWAS trade liberalization policy. So we hope and pray that taking cue from that, I think there is no reason why anybody will say products produced from the special economic zones in Africa should not be considered as a product coming from Africa. Whatever the benefits they are, that is, I think, something that should be encouraged, because the primary intention of all special economic zone is not about taxes and revenues. It is about the economic development, job creation, poverty alleviation, and also integration. And the essence of AfCFTA in the first place, it is about economic integration in Africa and also in integration of the movement of people. I think if anybody will try to create this loophole, I think we will still go back to the previous place of trade relations between African countries. I think already there are specific terms that need to be taken into cognizance about products that will come into the AfCFTA zones. The same thing like the ELTS in ECOWAS sub-region. I hope and pray that what is going to happen is that we will take into cognizance the percentage of production in each of these zones. What are the value additions in the products that are produced in the special economic zones? What are the contributions to them and the participants and everything? Once they have met the minimum requirement, I think it should be considered as a product originating from the member country, which is already a member of AfCFTA. I think that is the most important thing we should. But the time when you go into the details of what product and who is not supposed to, or because we are enjoying some small benefits of tax regimes and in the first place, we have all agreed that the special economic zones were not created because economies are not. They have another is primarily industrialization, technology transfer, employment generation, and also, most importantly, poverty alleviation, because economies will develop and there will be value addition. At the end of the day, government will get benefits that is multiplier more than the tax revenues they will have collected from those sectors. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll just go straight to the somebody who is dealing with the regional integration and all that, to ask him what they are doing with regards to creating, based on the AfCFTA, what are you doing to ensure that it does not kill local economic zones? Or are you partnering directly with the special economic zones developers to achieve what you're trying to do? We know that would lead to the continental integration. That is to Dr. Nobong Moesien, please.
Thank you thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, and let me join others too to appreciate NEBSA and UNCSBA for putting in place this kind of platform for us to share ideas and discuss on this important subject. The issue of continental free trade area and special economic zones is key to all of us today. Let me start by saying that, in the early days of independence, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, then the president of Ghana, said political independence without economic independence is a farce. Political independence without economic independence is a farce. And he was so confident that he was going to make Ghana #1, leveraging cocoa and potatoes. He began to produce cocoa and send it to international markets. By the end of the year, the prices of cocoa came down. He went to potatoes. News came out that potatoes from Ghana was injurious to health. By the end of the year, that was how Nkrumah could not sustain the growth of Ghana, simply because the prices of products from Ghana were set abroad. Today, the prices of cocoa produced in West Africa are determined abroad. Prices of palm oil produced in West Africa are determined abroad. Every commodity that we send out, the prices are determined abroad. The continental free trade area is to change this, to recreate some kind of new international economic order, so that autonomously we can produce, we can sell to ourselves, or we can determine prices. We can set the price of our goods for international bodies. Now, where is the place of special economic zones? The continental free trade area, you can only be competitive there if you are uploading heavy volume goods with high quality onto the marketplace. And this can only come from special economic zones. And that's why special economic zones are key. For us in ECOWAS, our focus is integration. How do we build bridges? How do we leverage the opportunities that exist between countries? Today, go to our border zones. They are some of the most resourced zones in Africa, and yet they are not touched because of controversies. Take Niger-Niger border zone, for example. There's a place they call no man's land. In that zone, you stop on the Libya side and you walk across to the other side. That space is highly resourced, but it's untouched because the two governments have not gone into adding value to that zone. Come to Seme border. During the days of the former presidents of Obasanjo and Keroku, reciprocity and friendship between the two countries, the border zone, Seme border is on Benin land, Idiroko is on Nigeria land. But this zone is highly resourced, agriculture, the ports, infrastructure, all of these are there. But no serious development is on in that space. The ADB is constructing a highway from Mombasa in Kenya that enters West Africa in Nigeria and gets to Lagos. There's another highway moving from Lagos all the way to the Mediterranean. And then there's the Lagos-Abuja corridor. Now, that zone, if you look at that zone, it has the potential to become a heavy logistics hub for Africa within the continental free trade area. So, operating cross-border special economic zones, which is the kind of thing we are trying to push, is to unlock the opportunities that exist in these border zones. To answer your question directly, it is not going to compete. Indeed, these zones that we are pushing are on PPPs, public-private partnerships. Government is pushing, with the support of the private sector, As of today, there's an MOU between the Chambers of Commerce of Benin and the Chambers of Commerce of Nigeria to push this kind of projects. And the idea is that we are working with the private sector and the government. And so when this zone comes into place, as decided by the government, as you know, we work with NEPSA, we work with UNVA, they are all part of the team that we are pushing towards this delivery of this. The concept study was undertaken by UNIDO, and we are hoping that as we move forward, sensitization is on, mobilization is on to bring in the traditional rulers, to bring in the private sector, to bring in the young men and women in that space, so that ultimate value is added to that space. So, in a nutshell, special economic zones, cross-border special economic zones are variable instruments for pushing development and upping the ante on the continental free trade area. In the last panel, the presenter spoke about green zones, green special economic zones. We are also pushing on this. We call them green enterprise villages. The idea is to leverage renewable energy to power spaces, clusters, and enterprise villages, and provide light, provide power to drive industrialization in those zones. As you know, in Africa and many of our countries, the food that we eat, the goods that are supplied to the towns, come from the rural areas, and the rural areas don't have energy. So how do you take energy to these rural areas to enable them to produce, to enable them to industrialize? The only way is to leverage renewable energy. So we are pushing towards that between Liberia and Sierra Leone, establish, to leverage biogas to produce gas to power generators that will provide sustainable energy to the village to enable them to produce. So to answer your question directly, no, we are not competing. We are not competing with the special economic zones. We are working with them in partnership through PPPs to enable to add value to the whole ecosystem and offload goods to the continental market.
Thank you. Normally, towards the end of this kind of events, the last speakers normally have very short time. It's because, people would have told you into the time and all that. Okay. So please, I'm sure we'll have opportunity to discuss these things more because it's very important. But I want to just quickly go to Mr. Pele and then to find out, because in all of this, without the right infrastructure, which you've mentioned the road to Mauritania or whatever, Mr. Pele, you've been involved somehow. What kind of, do we have the level of infrastructure that would enable the achievement of the continental free trade area? And how can the, especially economic zones operators, be of assistance or partner with governments to achieve that? But, you just try and, keep it compressed. Thank you.
Okay. I will follow the tradition of other panelists to commend the MDs of Oil and Gas Reason Authority and NEPSA for putting this conference together. The infrastructure is really a problem. I think someone in the course of the previous panel talked about the road, for instance, to the present One oil and gas free zone. You could spend some days, and I have experienced this personally, on that east-west road, a short stretch between Eleme Junction and you have the seaport there, which is part of the Oil and Gas Free Zone Authority, of Oil and Gas Free Zone area. You could spend 5 hours sometimes because of the poor nature of the road. I think that is one aspect. Even power also has to be looked into. So infrastructure is not quite what it should be. I know that the government is doing something, but it needs to be fast-tracked for us to really be able to harness the benefits of the Africa Continental Free Trade area. Otherwise, we'll also see lack of interest, in our SEZ areas, and that could be, something that will not encourage even further participation in what is actually a very big opportunity for Nigeria. And certainly the intention is to promote trade among African countries, because what I know is that inter-trade among African countries is very low. So this is one of the efforts to promote and enhance that relationship and take it higher, something closer to what is happening between African countries and countries in Europe and elsewhere. So it is a big opportunity, but infrastructure to support it is something to be looked into. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Last but not the least, Mr. David Frame of Eco Atlantic. You've been doing a whole lot, but at this point where most of Africa, as a matter of fact, not only Nigeria, there's this concern about insecurity and all that. How does it affect your decision, for instance, to expand, in terms of going more into the different areas to invest in security and the African special economic zones?
Well, thank you, Mr. Moderator. I also want to add my appreciation to NEPSA and OGFA for arranging this venue. And I think it was suggested earlier on that we should repeat this every year, and I wholeheartedly agree with that, because we need to go further. You touch on the issue of security. I think that that's also determined by the manner in which you develop the infrastructure within the free zones. And my friend here, Mike, he also mentioned on it. If you don't have the right infrastructure, you're not going to attract the kind of investors that you would want to come into the free zones. And I think one of the issues that hasn't been raised so far is the issue of the growing population here in Africa and particularly in Nigeria. We're told that by 2050 the population is going to be 400 million. That is incredible. And we're also suffering a brain drain of our young people, and people are trained here in Nigeria and then are taken when they achieve the level of confidence in their professions, that they leave Africa and go and work elsewhere. I think that has to change. One of the things that we are doing in Eco Atlantic is we are discussing the development of an international standard school to keep our young talented people here, but also to develop an international standard hospital, because we hear so much about people going out of Nigeria to be treated in hospitals in Dubai and India and even further beyond. We have to create value within the country so that people will be attracted not just to invest here, but our young people to stay here and help develop the nation the way we want it to be. And I think that is also linked when that confidence to stay in the country and help develop the country, then the level of security will be improved and increased. But at the moment, we're hearing, on the one hand, increasing population, and on the other hand, a brain drain. We have to find a way to unlock that drain of the resources. And Africa should be a net exporter of raw materials, but use the free zones to develop materials that can be developed to international standard and be an exporter, not a net importer. Okay. That's the way I feel that we can improve on the economies of not just Nigeria, but also Africa as a whole.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think the summary of it all is that the special economic zones stance and the African Free Trade Agreement, Free Trade Area are to complement each other. Yes. If everybody puts their acts together. So there's no cause for alarm. Therefore, if the issues of rules of origin, like he mentioned, which have been addressed, if we had time, I would have asked a question about who determines the rules, because that is very important. I think what we're saying here, what we seem to agree is that Africans must determine the rules for how they trade with each other. Maybe this problem of maybe WTO determining should be when we now want to trade with the outside world, then we can rely on that. Then we can be able to balance how we operate. But most importantly, as agreed here from all discussions, is that it is time for Africa to start trading with each other, build capacity locally before you start thinking of going outside. Our time is fast spent. Would have liked to discuss some more, and I thank all the panelists. I think I had the most interesting panelists, and would like to have more opportunities with you as well. We need more information. This time is too short, but we need to be able to share all this information and discuss further, especially with policymakers across the continent, and also educate people, especially government agencies like maybe customs, immigration, across, because everybody has to be on the same page. Thank you very much.